Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the most recent episode of Road to Retail. And good to see you, my friend Bruce. How are you?
Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good that just you and I today. I'm excited about this topic. So you want to tell our audience about what we're going to talk about today?
Yes. So today we're going to talk about how to prepare for and attend an industry trade show or an industry conference, because it's getting to be that time of the year. A few of the big ones are happening literally as we speak. And Tracy and I, as Road to Retail, we go to a lot of events, not only to learn and stay current on the industry, but also we're covering and providing recaps at some of these conferences as well. So let's take a step back. And for those of you that haven't been to many or have never been, here's kind of how it goes. So your brand is starting to get some traction, and you're thinking of making the investment to attend a trade show or a conference in order to get more involved with your industry. At these types of meetings, and we're going to cover the different kinds, you can meet buyers, you can meet people that service the industry, different kinds of suppliers, contract manufacturers, retailers are there. Sometimes there's people that provide financing. So there's many kinds of shows, and they can be very expensive. So you really have to have a plan on how to work these shows. Orders, distribution, investors, they just don't fall out of the sky. You got to work it. So we're going to kick off here, and Tracy and I are going to, pose some topics to each other and provide some answers. And we really hope you guys get a lot out of this today, because for those of you that have made the plunge, when we say that they can be expensive, you're like, yeah, no joke, Jack. So Tracy, let's kick this off.
Absolutely.
What types of trade shows are there out there? Tell the group what you've seen in your career here.
Well, there's definitely industry specific shows, there's themed shows, and then there's distributor shows. So just as an example, so far this year, Bruce and I have attended like the Fancy Food Show, which is put on by the Specialty Food Association. So that's international and domestic, food and beverage products. That was in Vegas in January. There's also been some ECRM conferences that we've been to where you're able to present your brand to buyers. And then there's industry shows as well, like Bruce and I are getting ready to attend a CHIPA conference, which is for healthcare products. So there's definitely a wide range of them. So whatever you're looking for, there's probably a trade show for it. There's also ones for beauty. Like, for example, this summer, there's a big beauty show in Vegas called Cosmoprof. So just all kinds of shows that are opportunities for you as a brand to either meet brand buyers or suppliers in the industry.
Yeah, and just to add a little color there, some of the conferences can be really highly focused. Like there could be regulatory conferences if you're in OTC medicines. There can be ingredient conferences in anything, food, beverage, vitamin and mineral supplements. And it's a good way to stay on top of changes in regulations, trends, certifications, all those kinds of things. So Tracy, how should somebody decide which trade shows to attend? Because again, these can be significant financial commitments.
I think the number one thing I want to tell our audience is know what your objective is. So, for example, we've got Expo West coming up here in a couple weeks, which is the big natural products industry show. 80,000 people, 4,000 booths. It's a very, very large show, but it's certainly not a selling show. It is a brand building, getting your brand out there to buyers and suppliers and things like that. But if you're going to an Expo West thinking, "Oh, I'm going to make take orders," you're going to be really disappointed. So understand what your objective is. Is it just to build your brand, to build awareness? Then, pick the right show. But if you want to sell product, then you'll want to go to a distributor show like a Unify or a KeHE has shows. And then some of the regional distributors also have shows that you can attend. And that's where you can actually sell and take orders and place those with the distributor and get your product shipped to a retailer or a retail chain.
Right. So as small emerging challenger brands, we're all aggressive. We don't want to wait till tomorrow. We want to do everything immediately. But one thing to do if you're not absolutely positive, as Tracy lays out, of knowing what your objective is, go to a couple of shows as an attendee
Yes.
and just walk the show. Be a participant so that you can evaluate, with minimal emotion and say, that is one I want to go to. Or you might say, thank God I didn't buy a booth. That's not what I expected. Because we've talked about it a little bit and we probably will again, but it's an expensive commitment. I mean, you have to pay for badges, for booth space. You have to travel out there. You may or may not want to host a small gathering of your suppliers or current customers or even just your team. So it is not for the faint of heart. So you want to make sure that you are making the right choice.
Absolutely. So, Bruce, talk to us, maybe our audience, a little bit about how do you know, how early do you have to commit to these shows, and then what do you need to bring?
Yeah, that's a good point. So again, if you've gone to a show, and we'll cover this again later, if you've gone to a show in the past and you like it, a lot of times there's early bird specials where you can renew and save some money. As soon as you start seeing or hearing about a show that you want to attend, you should probably sign up because many of them, the price gets a little bit higher as it gets closer because it's just like an airplane ticket. If you know you want to go to Paris a year in advance, you probably can do better than if you decide you want to go to Paris tomorrow. Okay, it's a quite a difference in expense. So the other things you want to think about is think about the size and location of a booth that you're going to get. I've been with companies and have worked with client brands that they're just happy to be in the show and they buy the cheapest booth possible and it's way off the beaten path. I mean, the only way you find those booths is if you're lost. Okay. So they're in like pretty bad locations. So think about how big you want to be and where you want to be. When I've been in charge of booking my own booths, I always wanted to try to project bigger than I was, right? So if I could get away with a small booth, I might buy the medium sized booth. And then if I'm not a super popular brand, I would try to get near the bigger manufacturers because the retailers are definitely going to go see Nestle and Procter and fill in the blank, and you can pick up some traffic as they're walking by to go to other places. The other things I would say is make sure that your booth is interesting, okay? And also make sure it's staffed. If you have some screens, and you don't have to have, $200,000 commercials running on a screen. You can have some PowerPoints showing sales trends. You can show your latest packaging, but that kind of motion creates curiosity. Curiosity, people will wander over. The other thing, you've paid a lot of money for these booths. Make sure they're staffed. I am always shocked when I go to these shows that people have paid out the gazoo to attend and the booth is empty. When that bell rings, or however the show you attend starts, usually it's some sort of announcement or literally a bell. You want to be there from start to finish. I cannot tell you how many times we've picked up quality interactions late in the day because a key retailer or supplier is walking the floor when it's quieter and they're not getting attacked every 10 feet by people that want to meet them. So you've spent the money, work the show. Tracy, anything to add there?
Yeah, I wanted to point out there's two different kinds of booths. So when you go to a big conference or not conference, but show like Expo West or a fancy food show, your standard booth or your smallest booth is going to be 10 by 10. And then you can go 10 by 20, 10 by 30. You can be as big as you want, but obviously the cost goes up. When you're attending a distributor show, you're going to be at a much smaller booth, which we call a tabletop show. And so that tabletop, you are going to get basically a 6-foot table to display your products on. So those are kind of the different. And then if you go to ECRM, like Bruce and I were just at an ECRM conference, you're going to get a small table where buyers are going to come to you and meet. So there's all kinds of different sizes for the booth. The other thing that Bruce mentioned that I think is critically important, and I've seen this a lot at trade shows where brands will send their local salesperson, or not to pick on them, but a person, and they'll sit there during the day and work on their computer and not interact with, the people walking by. So make sure that doesn't happen, because then you're just wasting your money. You want to be out in the aisle, like Bruce said, working the show, shaking hands, kissing babies, and talking to everybody you can, and getting samples in people's hands or your sales material.
Yeah, and one other thing there, if you're a firm that has, several employees, and one person may be a kick-ass employee, but they just aren't very uh, outgoing, don't bring them
Yeah.
unless they're vital. I mean, to Tracy's point, people sitting staring at their phone or working on their computer, you want people that are projecting, positive energy and excitement, and not psychopathic like a puppy that just ate 10 pounds of M&Ms, but someone who's smiling, they're standing, they're maybe handing out a sample or a goodie or anything I can help you with. Ask those open-ended questions that aren't yes or no. How can I help you today? Hard to answer that one, yes or no. Okay, so Tracy, let's keep pressing on. What is the strategy for attending a trade show that you've seen be successful?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is building brand awareness. So if you're a small emerging brand that's just getting into retail, or you're just, e-commerce only, you just want to make sure go to shows where you can be visible. And I think the key point here too, Bruce, I want to emphasize is if you can afford to be consistent. I've worked with a brand that started out going to Expo West and no one had heard of them. The next year, people are like, "Oh, I remember seeing you last year." And then every year you keep showing up, and then you're building that credibility that I'm here for the long term. So I think that's really important. And then the second objective, of why you want to go to a trade show is selling. Like we've mentioned, the distributor shows or an ECRM show where category reviews are going on and you're able to meet with buyers. And then again, you can go to shows that for suppliers, if you're looking for contract manufacturing, there's all kinds of shows for manufacturers in food and beverage and beauty, all kinds of things like that. So if you're looking for connections that way, and then also some shows are opportunities for you to meet with investors. So that's also another reason if you want to meet some folks that might be interested in investing in your brand, that's also a great way to do that.
Yeah, one thing to add here, if you're a very small firm and you're a one or two person operation, or you can only afford to send one or two people to these shows, you have to be, I guess, politely pushy because you have a limited amount of time. And if someone stops by your booth and just starts really chatting you up and they're sort of interesting, but they're not really you're there, take their card or take a contact form, something, and just tell them, you'll follow up with them next week. But you can't burn an hour talking to someone who's trying to sell something that you don't need. And you don't want to blow them off and be rude because you never know who people know. So,
Right.
you just want to find a way to very tactfully, keep things moving.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point on that about attending is if you're a brand founder, I highly recommend that you go to these shows because no one can tell your brand story better than you. And if buyers are coming by, let's say the Target, you're at Expo West as an example, and the Target buyer comes by, you want to be that person that tells your brand story. Not that your salespeople or the rest of your team can't tell it, but no one will tell it like you can.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Awesome. So, Bruce, why don't you give some examples? I think we've touched on a few, but maybe some examples of specifically of shows.
Yeah, I'd probably just recap quickly some of the ones Tracy already mentioned. So, Expo West is a big show. There's also its smaller cousin, Expo East, which takes place at a different time in the year, obviously on the East Coast, where Expo West is out in Anaheim. There's the distributor shows of KHE and UNFI. Tracy may add a little more color there in a second. But then the other shows, every industry of any scale probably has a specialty show. So I've never worked directly in something like soda or juices. I
Mhm.
have worked in coffee. There's coffee shows. There are all kinds. We just were at a show and there was an entire floor dedicated to candy. I did not know there were so many candy companies.
Mhm.
There's shows dedicated to popcorn. And then there's regional shows. Tracy and I spoke a couple of years ago at the California Grocers Association. So, again, depending what your industry is and what your goals are, you can probably find a show. Tracy, anything to add there?
No, I just think, there's one we haven't mentioned, which is a huge one in Chicago in November, is the private label show. So, like I said, Bruce and I have said, there's just pretty much a show for anything that you're wanting to show up and make connections with. It's a great way to see what's going on in the industry as well as to make good industry connections. So Bruce, let's move on and let's talk a little bit about conferences. We've talked about
Yeah.
trade shows, but let's talk a little bit about conferences.
Okay, great. So people might be thinking, well, what's the difference between a conference and a trade show? Well, Tracy did a good job articulating the trade shows. A lot of times at conferences, I would say the Montgomery definition is there's zero chance to sell anything,
Yeah.
right? You're there because it is something it's something specific to coffee or specific to beauty or specific to OTC medicines, health and wellness. So they might be talking about regulatory reform. It could be an ingredient show, a contract manufacturer show. So there might be some selling there, but it's really a chance to go learn about different things that are impacting your industry. Now, one of the things that I would counsel folks on, sometimes when you go to these big shows, there's so much info to cover, conferences, excuse me. There's multiple tracks or sessions going on at the same time. And if you've gone with a couple of people from your company, resist the urge to all travel together. Split up so you can cover as much of the show as possible. At some of the conferences, there will be retailer presentations, and they'll be going over like what are their strategy changes. These are our new executives. Here's something we're talking about with in terms of timing. This is our new these are our new green recycling initiatives. This is when you can go learn those things. Sometimes, if you're in an industry with a lot of regulation, there might be someone from the government, like there might be a new FDA person to talk about the new XYZ that are being excluded from grain-based products, so get the most out of it by split up. And conferences are a great chance to meet influential people and potential partners in your industry. And also by you guys being there, as Tracy said earlier, if you start to be seen at industry conferences and events, people will understand you're now part of the industry. And a good friend of mine who's been doing industry, been a big participant and supporter of industries and trade shows for years. He said, if you support the industry will support you. And I think that that's very true,
Yeah.
but you got to be involved. Tracy, anything to add there?
No, I think that's good. I think it's all about learning and being visible within the industry that you're in. If you're a beauty product, you want to be visible in beauty conferences or beauty trade shows. If you're a beverage, one thing we haven't mentioned are conferences like BevNet, which happens every year in June. That is a way to, get your product out there. Also, BevNet is huge for attracting investors. And then there's Nosh, which is the food side of BevNet. So those are just a couple other example of shows slash conferences that you can attend.
Yeah, another point I'd make that we've used successfully with companies we've worked for or clients is if there's multiple tracks going on, encourage your folks to take good notes, right? Take good notes, and then either at the end of the show or end of each day, get together and share what you learned. What you don't want to be is the brain dead zombie that's sitting there with a cup of coffee, sort of listening, playing on your phone and nodding. And 10 minutes after you leave the room, you have no idea what the hell they just talked about. So again, pay attention. You're spending a lot of time and money to attend these things and share that learning with your group. That's how you get better faster, is by bringing everyone along. All right, Tracy. So now we've made the commitment to attend a trade show. We've spent a lot of Benjamins to get a booth. How do I attract people to my booth?
Well, this is your huge opportunity to get samples and get your product into people's mouth. So sample, sample, sample. That is the best thing, best vehicle you can use to get people to your booth. Second would be, have a sell sheet that they could take. Now, remember, a lot of buyers are going to see a lot of booths and they may not want a sample. They may say, can you send me samples? Your answer is absolutely. Can I get your card, or can I take my scanner and scan your badge so that you go into my database, and I will make sure when I get back from the trade show that I will send you some samples. But if you've got a little, trial size of something and a buyer is willing to take it, that is your best marketing tool right there. And if they're interested and say, yeah, can I get a sell sheet? And then follow up with me after the show, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, then that's also a way to show that you're real, right? You're going to have pictures of your product on there. You're going to have your UPCs. Do not put pricing on there. I highly recommend not, because every retailer is going to be a little bit different and you don't want to scare them away. So I would leave pricing off there, but definitely make sure that you have your scannable UPCs on there, a few bullet points of features and benefits, and then also images of your product. So samples, and then handouts, and then, again, but don't bring too many. I've seen so many people bring thousands and thousands of sheets of paper and thousands of samples. It's very expensive, as expensive to ship it to the show as it is to ship it home. You'll probably just end up donating it. Most shows at the end have a way for you to donate your product to a local food bank, but limit the number. It's better to say, oh, we're out, and run to Kinko's, the night before to get more sell sheets made, than to bring 10,000 and have to ship 5,000 home.
Yeah, the other thing Tracy said, which is really important, especially if it's a meeting where where you're hoping to meet buyers, or you will be. Remember, these folks are attending a lot of meetings and going to a lot of booths. So don't make the mistake of handing the buyer a 45-page deck
No.
or a flash drive, because the flash drive will be wiped clean and given to their kid for their science project, and the deck will be left in their hotel room if it even makes it out of the conference center recycle bins.
Right.
And that's not to say you shouldn't be prepared. You should, but you have to be realistic. These people aren't bringing 9 more suitcases to take home their 65 decks. But Tracy already said kind of the magic word up front. If you get their contact info and you can acknowledge right up front, I mean, I do it all the time. It's like, look, I know the last thing you need is another 13-page deck. So what we're going to do is email this to you, but I'd like to share a one pager with you. And if I have a one pager on a new item or a launch, sometimes I'll go old school and laminate them because one, that's a little bit different. And two, that's a little bit harder to tear up and throw out. And three, one page can take a beating in their suitcase or whatever and may stand a chance of getting back to their office. But Tracy's point about getting their address and shipping stuff to them, that serves a couple of purposes. You now have all their contact info, and it creates a real reason for you to have another contact, because I can call up and say, hey, Tracy, just making sure you got those samples I sent to your office.
Yes.
Okay. So you're looking for contact points without being a pain in the butt.
It's all about touch points, guys. Make a great impression, tell your brand story, have a sell sheet, follow up, and send samples. That's what, 4 touch points right there. So, well, Bruce, let's talk a little bit about how to run an effective booth. I know you're very, passionate about this and, manning the booth and making sure you're there from start to finish. So talk to our
Yeah.
audience a little bit more about.
No, absolutely. And this is, again, this is one of those things where it's all about effort and showing up, right? So we've talked a bit about these. If you have, try to bring at least 2 people to a show, because you're going to want to go have lunch or you're going to need to use the bathroom or go get coffee, but you never want an empty booth. So if you can afford to have 2 or 3 people there, that's great, because if things really get cooking, you're going to have multiple people potentially stopping by. And most of the times, people are only going to stop by once. And if you're jammed up talking to someone else, you missed your chance with a flyby, right? So you want to make sure someone is available. Constantly be reviewing the list of attendees in the weeks coming up to the meeting. And there's some folks that'll sign up and renew, and they'll be listed immediately, but sometimes it'll only list the company. It won't list the people right away. And other people are, last minute Charlies, and they'll give their list of people like 4 days before the event. But keep looking at that list. And as you find the people that you'd like to try to meet, invite them to the booth. If they'll give you a real appointment time, do it. And even though you've spent all this money in the booth, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people succeed by saying, hey, I know your day's probably really busy, but could I buy you coffee? Could I buy you breakfast before the show starts? Or could we, meet for an adult beverage in a smaller group? All those things show that you kind of get it, that they're jammed during the day. So to Tracy's point about touch points, you're giving them options that they obviously can say yes or no to, but you're showing that you get it. Another reason you want to have more than one person is some people will be reticent to give you an appointment, but they'll say, I'll definitely stop by. So again, if you're really hoping to see a person from XYZ and they come by and you only have one person there and they're in the men's room or something, or they're talking to someone else, opportunity missed. The other things I'd say, and I've put it up before, and I believe this one sincerely, you've spent a lot of money, get to the show early so that when that bell rings, you're not just walking through the door or unpacking, you're ready to rock and roll, and stay until it ends. Another thing, at some point, all of your people, but at least one, should walk the entire floor very alertly. Alert? Why? Because you can learn a lot. See what other people are doing at their booth to draw attention. If some of your competitors are there, you might see that they're about to launch new packaging. You might see that the buyer you really want to meet was just over at the XYZ booth for 2 hours. Why were they there for 2 hours? Well, they either really like the food they're serving, or perhaps that could be an indication that they may have a big launch or restage, because most people don't give that kind of time to anybody. And if you have business with a couple of retailers already, really make the effort to reach out to them before the show, even if it's only to say, hey, Tracy, I know you're going to be at the show. We love doing business with you. If you have a chance, can you come on by? We have a few things we'd like to run past you. And then lastly, motion and color can work in your favor. If you have some monitors, we talked about, having commercials or sales presentations, or if you have influencers, anything with sales graphs that show business going up, images of your packaging, and use some colors that stick out. I mean, don't just be like the 900th blue and white booth, right? If you want, sometimes I think it's cheesy and sometimes it's been really effective. You know, if you want all your people to wear the orange shirt with your logo, sometimes that works and sometimes it looks silly. But, there's people that have the Hawaiian shirts, or they have the yellow shirts, or they have a really interesting logo, or they're sponsoring something. And that can be effective because people wonder what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Tracy, what do you have to add there?
Absolutely. Well, one thing that just as far as also giveaways is if you want to, a lot of times brands will give away a bag so people can carry around their samples. So that's a good marketing tool to build awareness. A couple other key points. Make sure that you do invest in a lead retrieval machine where you can scan everybody's badge. And then at the end, it gives you an Excel sheet printout of all the people that you met and their contact information. Then what you can do is you can break that out with your sales team to say, hey, Judy came by, that's on the East Coast. Will you contact Judy about the show? Another thing Bruce talked about, which is a great point about looking out for competitors. So many of the big shows, Expo West, Fancy Food Show, have apps. And you can go on the app, it's free, download it, and it will tell you all the exhibitors and what booth they're at. I would highly recommend you do that before going to the show, and then you'll know exactly, okay, well, I need to go by the competitors. You may learn a lot about new items they're presenting, or a new marketing campaign, or even just how they present their brand. If you're in that category, could be just a great insight into what's going on in your category.
Very
So
true. Hey,
lead,
Tracy,
lead retrieval.
this next point we kind of already hit on, but I did want to see if you had anything to add. So when you go to a trade show or conference and they have the multiple tracks going concurrently, anything else to add there about how
Yeah,
to
I would say
best cover?
this is really important, and I know I'm picking on Expo West just because it's such a mammoth show. So the bigger retailers, a Whole Foods, a Kroger, a Safeway, Albertsons will have what they call town hall meetings, and those will go on during the show hours. I would make sure you send somebody there to take really good, copious notes on what's going on with that retailer. They'll talk about what trends they're looking for, maybe what items they're looking for. Maybe they have a change in their marketing programs. You want to learn all that you can from those town hall meetings. And I did want to go back, Bruce, about, meeting buyers. One of the things that is definitely effective is having some kind of invite card to send to the buyer. Hey, just wanted you to know, Sam, we're going to be at this year's Fancy Food Show in New York. We'd love for you to come by. Here's our booth invite. We're at booth number 336. Please stop by. But realize they may or may not, but you've made that invitation. I was just at the Fancy Food Show in January. Most of the meetings I had were in the aisle when I was walking around and ran into buyers that I knew, or a buyer would stop by the booth. So they may or may not. Don't be offended by that. If they don't, send a follow-up anyway. Hey, Sam, sorry that I missed you. I know that it was a busy show, but I hope it was a great show. And by the way, I want you to here's our latest sell sheet with our new items. And can we set up a call to talk about them? Or can I send you samples?
Yeah, and one other point Tracy just sparked with me is if there's someone at a trade show or conference that you'd really like to meet, but for some reason you've been striking out, see if you have a contact that can introduce you,
Hmm.
whether it's, a supplier into you, a former colleague. Lots of times in a lot of these industries, we compete hard, but we're still good people and help people out. So, if Tracy knows somebody at this supplier of bottles and I don't, maybe I'd call him up and say, "Hey, Tracy, can you give me an intro to, Frank Smith over at Joe's Bottle Company? I know that you know him." And, it's all he can say is no, right?
Right.
But work your angles in advance. Okay.
So let's talk about follow-up.
Oh, my favorite topic.
Yes.
So again, you've spent all this money, you've sent people out there, you've done a good job, you attended all the different meetings, you met a ton of people, you're super, super tired, you cannot rest yet. Okay. So a lot of times what we'll do at the last day is we'll gather, if it's one of us or two or three or four, and we'll go through what did we learn and who's following up with which person and what did they want to know. And we always tried to get that out within 48 business hours tops of getting back to the office or the show ending. You want to strike while the iron's hot because many people are lazy and they'll catch up in like a week because they're tired, and them being tired is an advantage for you. Okay. Follow up and make it specific. If Tracy asks me to tell him about, the first ship date of XYZ, he doesn't care that we signed some fancy influencer. That wasn't his question.
Right.
So answer the question that he was asked, that you were asked, and keep it specific. Even if you're sending something generic, like you're sending thank yous for people that came by your booth, don't do one massive email. It's just stupid and it's lazy. For everyone that gave you the time, you probably talked about something that was a bit specific and unique. Even if it's like, hey Tracy, enjoyed meeting you at the booth, blah 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 blah. Good luck with your Dodgers. It just proves you were listening.
Correct.
It proves you were listening. And the biggest fatal thing we see, and we saw a lady from Whole Foods talk about this just this week. She said one of the things that gets you in her doghouse potentially permanently is when you send them a presentation and it has the wrong retailer's name in it.
Oh, yes. Totally.
Sloppy, not personalized, and you're not showing that you're really focused on helping them run their business. You're trying to do as little as possible for your business, and everyone will notice. Tracy, anything else on follow-ups?
Yeah, one of the things I'm very passionate about is when you send that follow-up, make an ask. Say, thanks for coming by the booth. Can I send you some samples? Can I set up a meeting with you so we can talk in more detail about the new product that you saw? So have a specific purpose in mind. Don't just say, "Hey, thanks for coming by the booth. Here's our sell sheet. Have a great day." Make sure
Yeah,
you
so Tracy makes a great point. So early on in the road to retail, Tracy and I interviewed 12 buyers from 12 of the biggest brick and mortar retailers in the country. And more than one of them, when we asked, like, what's kind of the weirdest thing that you see when you get presentations? Probably four of the 12 said, I can't tell you how many presentations I've sat through. And at the end, they didn't ask for anything. And I was like, what?
yeah,
He's like, I don't know if they want to test. Do they want distribution? Are they telling me they're working on this new product? So to Tracy's point, not only have an ask, but if in your follow-up you were talking about something very specific that, hey, this new item is going to be ready to launch on this date. We'd love to talk to you specifically about carrying them. Remind them of those dates.
yeah,
We just said a couple of key things. It's a new item. It's going to be ready on this date, which not only says, is it going to be ready on this date? It means it's real. And you have also communicated that other people are looking at it. Okay. All that stuff is important. Don't just be like, boy, those hot dogs were great at the break. It's like, you're an idiot. I'm moving on. All
yeah.
right. So Tracy, let's get into some Any closing general comments? We covered a lot of specific things, but any final pieces of counsel before we sign off here today?
No, I think that you just need to make sure a couple just key points and wrap it up is make sure you have a clear objective, whether that's just brand building or whether it's, you're trying to make, take orders and just make sure that you project out your brand and tell your story. I think those are really the big things, the purposes for those trade shows and make the most of it. I would say also on those like those town hall meetings, if you met somebody, say you met Sally was a speaker from Whole Foods and you want to reach out to Sally, hey, enjoyed your presentation. It was great to hear about your new, marketing program. I'd love to learn more about that. Make it about them. Say, I'd love to learn more about that, Sally. Could we set up a call where we could talk about how I could participate in that? Buyers love that. You're telling them what can I do for you, not just about what you can do for me.
Yep, yep. And the other thing I would point out is a lot of these big shows and conferences, they're whether they'll admit it or not, they're businesses too, right? So they want more people to attend. They want more people to want the King Kong booth versus the card table back by the men's room. And in order to make people have a good time and get the most out of the show, many of these conferences and trade shows have like orientations for first time exhibitors. Don't blow that off. Go. Some of them, NACDS annual, for instance, they'll assign you like a mentor. So the first time I ever attended that, I was assigned a gentleman from actually a competing company, and he did a great job. The whole first couple of days, he kept swinging by to make sure I was happy and comfortable and knew what I was doing. And at first I thought, oh man, I've been to conferences and trade shows. I got this. And he told me I shouldn't think that way because I had spent a lot of money. So he appealed to my cheap Scottish blood. And I said, ooh, he's right. So off I went to the orientation and getting assigned this mentor. It was well worth it. Well worth it to make sure that we knew what we were doing and maximize the investment we had made. Trace, anything else? Otherwise, we might be ready for the big finish.
Not well. I just want to say that when you go to a big show, usually there's an opportunity to order your booth or get a booth for the following year. We strongly urge you to do that. That way you can pick out the booth in advance. Normally there's a price break on the booth if you commit early, and you'll get your pick of the litter on where you want your booth for next year. So just wanted to throw that out as well.
Yes, and Tracy's point's a good one. So when you go the first time, you can use some judgment as to location, but after you've actually been there
Yeah.
once as an exhibitor, that's also why we said maybe the first year you just go as an attendee and walk around. But if you want to jump in with both feet right away, you can make some judgments of where you want to be, but after that first year, you'll know where you want to be.
Yep.
You'll
Absolutely.
know where you want to be. All right, Tracy, bring us home, baby.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, audience, spending time with us today. Continue to follow us on Spotify as well as Apple at Road, the number 2 retail. We also have a new website, www.roadtoretail.com. Check us out there and continue to look for our episodes. We post every Tuesday. And thanks for
Yep.
joining us.
Good luck out there, folks. This is a big time of year and a big investment. If you have any questions, as Tracy said, out on the website, you can zip us a note or find us out on LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you, everybody.